Namaskar everyone and welcome to our Gita Satsang for today. Today is the auspicious occasion of Ashada Shuddha Purnima, that is Guru Purnima. It is the day when people all over the world offer obeisances to their acharyas and gurus out of gratitude for all the knowledge that has been granted to them. So, offering our prayers to the acharyas, let us start our satsang with the usual prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt all the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let's chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the acharyas, let us go to our shloka for today. We are indeed blessed that we are able to have a satsang on this Shubha Muhurta of the Guru Purnima. So let us see what Krishna, we know that Lord Krishna is in that avatara, that is the only avatara where the name of Acharya has been suffixed to the Lord's name. Many times Krishna is also called as Gita Acharya because he did Upadesha of the Bhagavad Gita. So not only Arjuna who listened to him benefited, but from ages so many people all over the world have been benefiting from this great Upadesha which was done by the foremost Acharya, who is Sri Krishna himself. So now we have been seeing in this chapter how Krishna has been explaining about the different ways of performing dhyana, of doing yoga abhyasa. So in the previous shlokas, we saw how he talked about the conditions which should be there for a person who wants to practice dhyana. So now he's further going to tell about what we should do once we have the correct asana, once we have chosen the right place, then how should we do our meditation. That is what he is going to explain in the next few shlokas. So in the 12th shloka, Krishna says, Tatraikagram manah kritva yata chittendriya उपविश्यासने युञ्ज्याद्योग matma vishuddhaye. So in that place, in the previous shloka, he told that you have a proper seat, which is neither too high nor too low, isn't it? So now he says there, sitting on the seat, focusing the mind in concentration, with the thoughts and the senses restrained, one should practice yoga for self-purification. So what he is telling here, sit on the proper asana. Now, we know that for all the important activities which are prescribed in the Shastras, it is told that we should sit on the floor. And although we are sitting on the floor, there should be some there should be something between us and the ground. So normally that darbha grass is used. So even in the previous shloka, when Krishna told about the asana, he said that you should have, spread darbha grass, or you should have spread the deer skin or a silk cloth on your asana. So when we sit like that on the proper asana, it is very vital for us to choose the right position also. So This sitting on the floor, of course, people who are not able to sit on the floor are given the allowance that they can sit on the chair, but those who can should sit on the floor. In since the olden times, it was advised for all the important activities, even for having food, for eating our meals, they were telling that we should sit on the floor, we should sit cross-legged, and that asana is very crucial to help us to digest the food also in a proper way. So the minute somebody practices sitting on the floor, it is noticed that their body becomes very flexible. If we are always used to only sitting on top, on a chair, on a high position, then what happens is our muscles of the leg, the thighs, the back, they don't cooperate with us and we cannot sit on the floor. But if somebody regularly practices sitting on the floor, especially in the cross leg position, then that body is very flexible. And here the acharyas tell that when you sit on the floor, if required, because it is difficult to sit in an erect position for very long continuously. So you can use a kind of a mild support for the back. It should not be a very big soft pillow which suddenly if we lean back we will fall asleep, not like that, but at least a small bit of support for the back can be used if required. Now, sitting in that asana, what should we do? We should focus the mind, bring the mind to concentrate on the practice of meditation. We should restrain all other thoughts and we should restrain our senses. Normally, we notice that when we sit down to meditate only, we have our mind running here and there, and all thoughts which till then were not troubling us, suddenly they have started coming more and more. Then we see that our eyes want to open and look here and there. Our nose is smelling what all is being, the smells which are spreading in the air. Our ears listen to what other people are trying to say. And like this, our senses run here and there. So when we sit for doing yoga abhyasa, we should focus our mind. We should restrain those thoughts. We should control those thoughts. First, we must get awareness that our thoughts are running here and there, that our senses are running here and there. We must try our best to restrain, to control those thoughts and senses. And sitting in this position with a focused mind, with our thoughts and senses restrained, we should practice yoga. What is the purpose of such yoga? Is it that we want a particular benefit out of that? Are we like how in the olden times we know how so many great bhaktas of the Lord they did tapasya? We have also seen how so many asuras also did tapas. And what was the purpose of all that tapas? To get some benefit, isn't it? But what is the purpose of this yogi who is doing this dhyana yoga? It is not to attain any other external goal, but for the purpose of purifying oneself. Now, when we start doing practice like this, initially we will find it very difficult. And we must make sure that we keep all conditions as conducive as possible. We've seen in the last satsang how Krishna told that sit in a quiet place, sit at a time when there is no one to disturb you, try to have a good proper asana. Now, all these things, it may we may think that if really we are going to be able to concentrate the mind, then once the mind is concentrated, all these things do not make any difference, isn't it? Because if really I'm able to concentrate, then whether there are people talking in front of me or it is silent, I should not be affected. Whether there is a noise in the surroundings or there is silence, I should not be affected, isn't it? But what happens is that in the initial stages, all these factors are very big distractions for us. So it will be very difficult for us to practice meditation. So, first, we must try and make all conditions very perfect for us. As we keep on practicing this meditation more and more, then when we become an expert at it, even if there is little disturbance or there is some noise around, it may not affect us. But to get there in the initial stages, we should not have any distractions. This is like how when somebody is newly learning Sangeeta, learning to sing or learning to play a musical instrument, then they need to have all conditions perfect around them. They should have the right time, their voice should be in good condition, then they should be able to set the Shruti. They will have that box where there is a little that Shruti tune which comes out. So they will set their tune, their tone of voice to that Shruti, and then they will proceed to sing. So all that is required for the one who is the novice, for the one who is a starting person in the musical field. But for somebody who has become an expert musician, then he doesn't need all these things. He doesn't have to set the Shruti and then start singing. Anytime, any moment somebody asks him to sing or her to sing, they will immediately start singing, isn't it? So, in the same way, for somebody who is starting to do meditation, we should take care that all the conditions are perfect. As we become more and more expert at it, we will find that we are able to get concentrated in meditation with very little effort. So that is what Krishna has told in this shloka. So he has told here that sit on the asana properly, focus your mind with concentration, restrain the thoughts and the senses, and do this practice of yoga, do this dhyana for purification of the self. Now, in the 13th shloka, he tells something more. So, I have decided that I'm going to sit. Okay, when I sit, what should exactly I be doing? That is what he's telling in the 13th shloka. So, he says, Samam kaya shiro grivam dharayanna chalam sthiraha samprekshya nasikagram swam dishashchanavalokayan. So, he says, hold three parts of your body straight and without movement. What are those three parts? The trunk. The trunk means our chest part of the body. The chest region, the head region, and the neck. These should be kept erect. Erect means straight, motionless, and steady. Achalam and sthiram. Both these he is telling. When we sit like this, what we should do? We should focus our attention somewhere. Our eyes will want to look somewhere. So, where should we look? Where should we focus our attention? At the tip of one's own nose. And we should sit like that without looking here and there. Instead, our drishti should be on the tip of our own nose. So, here, previous shlokas, Krishna has told about what all outside things should be there. Now he is telling how this body should be positioned when we want to do dhyana. So even nowadays, modern research scientists are also finding that when people sit in that erect position means the spine, the back, the vertebral column, that spine is perpendicular. It is at a 90-degree angle to the surface on which you are sitting, then that is the best posture for the body. So here for dhyana, it has been told by all our, Rishi Munis that sitting in that position is the best possible position to attract all the positive energies. So we must sit with the head, the neck, and the chest region straight. And sitting like this, we should be in such a position that it is achalam and it is sthiram. So both these words, achala and sthira, they seem to indicate the same meaning. Achala means motionless. Motionless means without any movement. And sthira means steady, right? So although these two words sound very same, if you are without movement, then you are steady. That also is there. But what is the difference here? That if it is for a short time, if I'm going to sit and I'm going to sit without moving for a short time, that kind of motionlessness is called as achalam. But if somebody has to sit without moving for a very long time, then they are told that you should be sthira. Then now Krishna is saying, when you're sat like this and you are now ready to meditate, it is natural that of all the senses, the most distractible one is the sense of vision. Our ears, nose, tongue, and all also get distracted, but they take little longer to get distracted. Whereas our eyes are very immediately distracted. So eyes will try to look here and there in all the directions to see what's going on, right? But we should not do that. Krishna is telling Arjuna that when you sit in this position, don't look around in all the directions. Don't look around here and there. What is it then that we should look at? Where should we be seeing? Should we keep our eyes completely closed? Should we keep our eyes fully open? So here Krishna tells that look at the tip of your own nose. So if you notice, if you try to do that, just lightly keep your neck and head and trunk erect, sit straight, and then try to look at the tip of your own nose. You will find that your eyes are going into a half open, half closed kind of a position. That is considered the best position in which to meditate. We should not completely keep our eyes open while meditating, because when our eyes are open, natural tendency of the eyes is to get distracted by any movement anywhere. So that is not going to work. If we close our eyes, of course, we can shut out all the distractions. But when we close the eyes, there is a chance that we may feel so relaxed that we may fall asleep also. So, the best thing that is told is that we should look at the tip of our nose. And when we try to look at the tip of our nose, our eyes are not fully open and looking at the outside world, but they are not fully closed. So, there is no chance of us falling asleep also. So, in this partially open condition, we have to keep our eyes. That is what is told in this shloka. So we should sit with the head, the neck, and the chest erect. We should not be moving around, and we must not look here and there. Keep our eyes partially open and focus our attention on the tip of our own nose. Now, in the 14th next shloka, Krishna tells about this kind of a person who is doing this dhyana. What kind of a person is able to do this? So he says, Prashantatma vigatabhi brahmachari vrate sthitah manas samyamya machitto yukta asita matparaha. So he says such a person who is serene, who is prashanta, and without bhaya, fearless, firm in brahmachari vrata, somebody who has been able to hold the mind in control and fix the thoughts on Krishna. Such a person can be able to sit in meditation, and he considers the Lord only to be the most supreme. So here, who is this Prashantatma? The Acharyas describe that somebody who is having tripti, somebody who is contented with whatever they have. That bhava of tripti leads a person to become Prashantatma. He is serene, he is calm. Why there is calmness? Because there is no agitation in the mind. Where does agitation in our mind come from? When we have certain desires and those desires are not fulfilled, then we have agitation in our mind. We want something but we are not getting it. We don't want something but we are getting that. So that leads to agitation, that leads to restlessness. But if somebody has nothing like that, they are not affected by what they have, they don't have, they are completely content, they have tripti with whatever they are having, then such a person is said to be a prashantatma. So this kind of a person has no agitation. So their mind is calm, and when the mind is calm, it is easier to focus it on the Lord. Then vigatabhihi, one who has no fear, somebody who is fearless. Again, when we have some, anxiety about things, then we are always having fear in our mind. Will I be able to get that? Will I be able to go there? Will I be able to achieve what I want? But if there is someone who has absolutely no attachment to things in this world, then that fear also, which comes from the attachment, goes away. So such a person is fearless. Then the third thing that Krishna is telling is this person should be situated in brahmacharya vratam. They should be practicing celibacy. So we may wonder now, this brahmacharya vratam means somebody who is abstaining from having a physical relationship with another person. So it is always told that somebody who is we know there are 4 stages of life, right? There are 4 ashramas. There is brahmacharya ashrama, there is grihastha ashrama, there is vanaprastha ashrama, and there is sannyasa ashrama. So those who are in the brahmacharya ashrama, for those people, they are in brahmacharya vrata. But what about the people who are grihasthas? How can you say, how then does it mean that because they are grihasthas they are not brahmachari? So if they are not following the brahmacharya vratam, then does it mean that they cannot do meditation, they should not do meditation? Is it prohibited for them? Not like that. So here the acharyas explain that if there is a grihastha person who is having sharirika sambandha with only the one who is prescribed for them through the shastras at whatever time the shastras prescribed, and such a person is committed and loyal to that one life partner whom they have, and physically and mentally they are restraining from wrong kind of sambandha with the wrong person at the wrong time, then even such a grihastha is said to be situated in brahmacharya vrata. So as per the shastras, once somebody has uh, got married to another person with Agshi, then that person is the only one with whom they are allowed to have any kind of a relationship. So, when that person and at the prescribed time, only for the purpose of begetting children at the prescribed time, when the sambandha is there, then even though they may be grihastha, they are still considered as practicing brahmacharya vratam. So, such people also are. So, if somebody wants to practice yoga abhyasa, then they should be like this. This is what should be their standard. Either they are brahmacharis or they are belonging to grihastha or other ashramas. But if they are grihasthas, they should have only the prescribed, the shastra sanctioned kind of relation. Okay, then Krishna is telling that such a person who has controlled the mind, such a person can practice yoga. So, what is this controlling the mind? So, in Yoga Shastra, it is told that getting rid of five kleshas, there are five causes of disruption in our life. These five kleshas, if somebody gets rid of them, then that person is said to have controlled the mind. So, what are these five kleshas? Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, and Abhinivesha. Avidya means lack of true knowledge, ignorance. What is this ignorance? Ignorance of the idea that the atma and the body are separate, that the atma is eternal. Not having that knowledge is called as avidya. What is asmita? Asmita is the sense of ego, feeling that I, this body, am everything, not realizing that the body is given for the purpose of this atma to go through all its karma vasanas, thinking that this body only is I. That is the sense of ego, asmita. Attachment to all the different things in this world, that is called as raga. Aversion, hatred, repulsion for things in this world is called as dvesha. And abhinivesha, the fear that I will die, the fear that, oh, something will happen to me, that is called as abhinivesha. So, somebody who has all these five cannot control their mind. The very purpose of doing meditation is also to overcome all these. But until we have started the process to overcome these five kleshas, it is not possible for us to completely control the mind. So, somebody who is trying to get rid of these kleshas, such a person who has got some level of mind control, will be attaining that state as and when they go through the practice of yoga. Now, so there is what Krishna is telling in this shloka, that a person who is prashantatma, a person who is without bhaya, the person who is sticking to the vow of brahmacharya, such a person controls the mind. And controlling the mind, what does he do? He fixes his thoughts on the Lord only and constantly sits in meditation. Now, here this constantly sits in meditation. In today's times, we already said it is not possible for us to all the time. We are not going to be doing dhyana. We are not like the yogis and tapasvis who are always doing dhyana. But for us, when we say sit in meditation constantly, the meaning is that for at least the time that we have decided, we should be able to put aside all other thoughts, control our mind, and fix our thoughts on the Lord. Now, there are certain schools of thought where they tell that the dhyana should be on the supreme energy, or they will say you think of paramatma, or they will say you concentrate on light, or they will say you concentrate on energy, the super energy in this world, and things like that. Now, all those things are very vague. They don't have a form. They are very difficult for our mind to grasp and to hold on to. That is why, for those who are taking the practice of bhakti, it is comparatively easier, because if we say, and the Lord Himself has told here in the Bhagavad Gita, that you sit in dhyana with your mind fixed on me, He says. So, fixing our thought on the Lord means what? We should choose any one form of the Lord which is most dear to us. The Lord is there in so many Archavatara forms, in so many temples, in so many places in our country. So, whichever is that one favorite form of your Lord, hold on to that. Cling to that form of the Lord with your mind's eye and sit in meditation, fixing your thoughts on Him. That is what is required of us. That is what Krishna is telling here. So, these are some of the things that we learnt about in today's shlokas. We've seen the three shlokas. So, let us see whether we are able to follow all these things. As we always say, it is by the blessings of our Acharya that we are able to get anywhere in our sadhana marga. So, we must pray always for the blessings of the Lord, for the blessings of the Acharya to be on us. Now, because today is the occasion of Guru Purnima, I'll just narrate one story which highlights the importance of this Guru, the Acharya, in our life. There was a time when Swami Ramanuja was doing a lot of upanyasams, he was giving pravachana to many disciples in Sri Rangam. Now, he had one disciple called Dhanurdasa. So one day, this Dhanurdasa was also sitting, and Swami Ramanuja was describing the occasion from the Ramayana of Vibhishana Sharanagati. If you remember, when we studied the Srimad Ramayana in our Dhanurmasa Satsanga, we had talked about how that whole episode rolls out, right? That Vibhishana has come there, he has left Ravana, he has given up his Bhratra Dharma, and he has come to accept Rama as his savior. He has come and done Sharanagati at the lotus feet of Lord Rama. Now, when Vibhishana has come there, Rama takes the opinion of all the people around him, right? You remember that. So, many of them, all the Vanaras, they say that he should not be trusted. He is Ravana's brother. So, Vibhishana is not fit to be trusted. Maybe he has come as a spy. Maybe coming here he will do harm to us. And all these Vanaras, Sugriva, Angada, so many of them, they all say we should not take him. In fact, some of them say we should kill him, or some of them say we should test him. Then, like this, they are all against Vibhishana, right? Then Rama asks Hanuman, and Hanuman says, he is a dharmatma, he is a good person. I have seen how he has been, and he is the one who protected me from Ravana killing me. And therefore, because he is dharmatma, we should accept him. He is a dharmic person, so we should accept him. That is what Hanuman says. Then finally, Rama speaks, and he says, unfortunately, none of you have been able to understand my whole stand in this issue. Whether I'm not bothered whether somebody is bad, I'm not bothered whether somebody is good. Just because somebody comes to me and falls at my feet, I will accept them. And we know of that Charama Shloka of Rama, where he says, Sakradeva Prapannaya Tabasmiti Chayachate Abhayam Sarvabhutebhyo Dadamyetat Pratam Mama. So Rama is promising that I'm not bothered because he is good, he is bad, I'm not considering all those things. The very fact that he has come and surrendered to me and said, I am yours, I'm going to accept him. So this entire episode was being narrated by Swami Ramanuja, and all the disciples were listening with rapt attention to it. However, this Dhanurdasa heard all this, and then slowly he got up and with a very sad face, he started walking away from the pravachana. Now, normally, if there is everybody sitting silently and listening, and one person stands and starts walking away, it is very observant, isn't it? It's very noticeable. So at that time, Ramanuja noticed that why is this Dhanurdasa? Dhanurdasa is such a great devotee of Ramanuja. Dhanurdasa is having so much interest in listening to the pravachanas every day. Why is this Dhanurdasa going away? And why is he looking so sad? Why does he have like almost tears in his eyes and he's walking away? So Ramanuja stops him and he says, Dhanurdasa, please stop. What is the matter? Why are you going away? So Dhanurdasa says in a very, hopeless voice, he's full of desperation and in a very depressed way, he's standing there and he tells Swami Ramanuja that, see, I am really very disappointed. You are describing how Rama did so much of an inquiry from everybody to ask whether to accept somebody like Vibhishana. Now, Vibhishana was such a great Dharmatma. Vibhishana is somebody who is known for always being on the path of Dharma. And to accept such a person, Rama had to have so much of discussion and talk and all that. So, for me, what is the hope? I am not a Dharmatma like Vibhishana. I am not a great person. I am every day making so many mistakes. I am guilty of so many sins I have committed. So if Vibhishana himself was not accepted by the Lord just like that immediately, imagine if Lord starts doing inquiry about all my faults and all my crimes and all my papas, definitely there'll be nothing for him to accept me. That's why I'm disappointed and I'm going away because now I have realized that there is no hope at all for me. I will definitely not get moksha because compared to Vibhishana, I'm such a papi. Like that, he said and he stood there. Now, to convince him, Ramanujacharya said, Okay, Dhanurdasa, you don't worry about that. Now, you tell me one thing. Do you think I will get moksha? So, Dhanurdasa said, Of course, you are a Paramacharya. You are Jagadacharya. Definitely, you are the favorite of the Lord. So, definitely, you will get moksha. So, Ramanuja told him, I will get moksha and you are so sure of it. So, if I get moksha, will I not take care of you who are my Shishya? And when you ask this question, I had asked a similar question to my Acharya who was Periyanambi. And my Acharya told me the same answer. He said, if I am going to get moksha, then definitely I will take care of you. Where did my Acharya get that confidence? Because his Acharya had promised him that he will give him moksha. So, like this, we are all fortunate that we have the entire Guru Parampara which is supporting us. So in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, we say that it starts from Lakshmi Natha. It starts from Sri and Shriyapati. From there, through Vishwaksena, through Nammalvar, Swami Nammalvar, then through Nathamuni, and so many acharyas, right up to whoever is Asmad Acharya, whoever is my personal Acharya at this point of time. Every single Shishya is hanging on with the thought, with the courage that his Acharya is going to take care of him. So, this is what is the lesson that Ramanujacharya tried to convey to Dhanurdasa. That don't need to have any qualification of your own. You don't need to worry about whatever good you have done. You don't need to worry about whatever bad you have done. If your Acharya is happy with you, if you have done Acharya Seva, if you have pleased your Acharya, if you have the grace of your Guru, then with that Guru Kripa, that itself is what is going to take you and ensure that you get moksha. Another of Swami Ramanuja's Shishya described this through a very interesting example. He said that once there was one small insect and there was another insect. So this one insect told the other insect that, can you see that hill which is so far away? By another 1 or 2 hours, I'm going to be on that mountain. So this other insect laughed and he said, What are you talking? What nonsense? How much distance can you cover? So little. You are such a tiny insect. How will you be able to reach that high mountain in 2 hours? That is absolutely not possible. In fact, by the time you reach at least one fourth of the way, only you would have died. Your lifespan only will get over. It's not possible for you to reach there. So this first insect said, You just wait and see. I will reach there. And then, after some time, indeed, this insect reached that mountain. How had it reached there? Very simple. What it did was, there was a lion which was standing on this mountain. This insect climbed and hung on to the tail of that lion. For the lion, climbing down one mountain and reaching the other mountain is not at all difficult. So within a few minutes, that lion had crossed over to the other mountain. What quality did this insect have that it would be able to reach there? Nothing of its own. But it did the right thing, it took the right step of attaching itself to the lion's tail. So, like that, as individuals, we have nothing of our own. We are akinchana. We have absolutely nothing. And we are having ananya gatitva also. We don't have any other gati. There's nobody else to take care of us. So, what is the best way for us? What is the smartest thing we can do is attach ourselves to our Acharya's holy feet. Get ourselves the grace, the kripa, the anugraha of our Acharya. And if we are able to get the Acharya kripa, then he will take us across this samsara. He will take us and make sure that we reach Sri Vaikuntha. So, like that insect, which was so smart in attaching itself to the lion's tail, and it managed to do something which would not have been possible for it to do in its lifetime, same way, we should always try and remember our Acharya. We should always feel kritagnyata towards our Guru. We should have this bhava of gratitude and attach ourselves, try and do as much seva of the Guru as possible so that we are able to cross this samsara sagara. The Guru, by his grace, will take us across. No quality of ours is going to grant, make sure that we get moksha. It is only the Lord's grace through the Guru which comes to us that we are able to reach to moksha. We are able to reach the lotus feet of the Lord. In fact, it is told so many times that even the Lord does not mind if you do something to anger him, he will still forgive you. But if you do something to displease the Guru, then he is never going to be able to forgive you. So we must make sure. Many times there are times when the Lord may get angry on someone, but if the Guru requests, then the Lord will melt. If the Devi requests, then the Lord will melt. But if the Guru gets angry on somebody, then there is no hope for such a person. So we must always make sure that we are serving our Guru with the right spirit. We are following the whatever is told in our Acharya Parampara and try and do the maximum possible to get the pleasure of the Guru, to give joy to the Guru. And if we have an Acharya, we can do all these things to him. When we don't have an Acharya or a Guru, then we must pray very much to the Lord to guide us to the right Acharya. And when the time comes, such an Acharya will be present in our life. So, with that bhava, whatever we are doing, whatever activities we are doing, whatever sadhana we are doing, whatever abhyasa like this, whatever study we are doing, let us offer all that at the lotus feet of our Acharya. Let us remember that it is only by the Lord's grace and the Acharya's grace that we are even able to have the mind, the time, the energy, the interest to be able to pursue these things. As always, it is nothing of ours that we have here, but it is because of their grace only that all this is possible for us. So, we have come to the end of our time for today's satsang. Again, once more, I convey my best wishes to all of you and prayers that let Acharya bless all of us. So, let us offer Kritagnyata at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and our Guru for inspiring us to join this satsang, to start this satsang, to talk of all these things, and let their blessings and grace always be on us. Today being Guru Purnima, there is maximum, positive energy from the Guru Tattva which is there in the atmosphere. Let us benefit from that by chanting and praying to the Lord and Guru maximum today. And always let us keep that bhava that always the Guru is there with us. Always the Guru's grace is blessing us to continue further. And with that Kritagnyata, if we do smallest of actions, then we will find that things become very easy for us in our life. So let us constantly pray for their guidance and let us constantly keep feeling Kritagnyata to them for all that we have been blessed with. Thank you, everybody. I must offer my gratitude to all of you also, because since you are here along with me on this journey, together this sadhana is possible for all of us. If I was alone, I may not have been interested in studying the Bhagavad Gita in so much detail. But because all of us are together, it gives a lot of enthusiasm to study, to share all this knowledge by the Acharya's grace. So we will meet again next Thursday once more. For today, we will stop here with Kritagnyata. Thank you, and we'll meet again next week. Namaskar.